Thanks for joining us on episode 1610 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
I'm Matt Morizio, and I challenge you to invest in yourself, invest in others, develop your influence, and impact the world by using your time, your talent, and your treasures to live out your calling. Having the ability to recognize that moving forward with open palms is key. And one way to be inspired to do that is to listen to this, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast with my friend Scott Mader. And I never even knew I had a relationship with money because I grew up in a home where I got screamed at. I got in a lot of trouble if I didn't turn the heat down when I left in the winter in Boston. And it's cold and it's an oil heat house. So if I didn't turn it down to 58, we heard about it.
Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world.
In today's podcast episode, I interview Matt Morizio. I asked Matt about his mindset shifts and how it helped him move from baseball to entrepreneurship. Matt also shares with you how he's learned to lean into being uncomfortable. I also asked Matt to share with you more about what it means to have a truly abundant mindset. I have a great book that's been out for a while now called Inspired Living. Assemble the puzzle of your calling by mastering your time, your talent, and your treasures. You can find out more about that book over at inspiredlivingbook.com. It'll take you to a page where there's information and you can sign up to get some mailings about it as well as purchase a copy there. I'd love to see you get a copy and share with me how it impacted your world. Matt Morizio is a man of faith, a 14-year husband, and a father of 7. He's an entrepreneur and the founder of Reconstructing Wealth, and before that, he chased his baseball dreams as a catcher and pitcher in the Kansas City Royals minor league system. His mission is to transform people's relationships with money, from scarcity to abundance, from confusion to clarity. He is his own case study number 1, as his own relationship with money has changed. His life has changed. Better relationships, better sleep, more present in his day, and more intentional with his actions. Now he helps listeners like you do the same, empowering you to take control, build confidence, and create a life you don't feel the need to escape from. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Man, thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor. I've been looking forward to having this conversation.
Absolutely. I really look forward to chatting with you today. We've gotten to know each other a little bit before the show, and I just shared a little bit in the intro some of the things you've done around both your home life as well as being an entrepreneur, working with Reconstructing Wealth, and then of course baseball. Which is kind of cool. We were just talking about doing a lot of different things through our life, and it's like baseball and wealth.
That's right.
And the fact that some of us are a little eclectic, but talk a little bit about that journey. First off, what kind of steered you down the line of baseball? And then how did that come around to what you do now? And why is this sort of the message and the work that you're called to do?
Sure. I think there's a lot to unpack there, but I'll start with the baseball part. Just felt like a lot of little boy dreams of I want to be a professional baseball player when I grew up. And that was me. I was among a whole bunch of them in my my preschool graduation yearbook, which we did have one of those. There was under the what do you want to be when you grow up umbrella. I wrote baseball player. Like there was a section to write that, and there was firefighters and veterinarians and astronauts and athletes, and I wanted to be a baseball player. But for me, it was a bit of a proclamation from an early age. Now, I'm not trying to say I was like a savant and knew exactly what I wanted to do with my entire life. I just had this inkling in me that said, I really want to do this forever, like if I can. And then I got to play longer. And as I got to play longer, I loved it more and I was good at it, and like who doesn't like to do things they're good at? So I was winning and enjoying it. And it was fun to be the best on the field. And that just kind of fueled my passion for it. But eventually, like early high school, I really saw, wow, I could probably do this in college, I think. And that's when the naysayers and the I don't want to say haters, it was the people that were closest to me that out of protection started to give the realistic advice of like, you understand though the statistical odds of a high school athlete making it to play Division I sports, right? So you probably should set your sights on a different target. And if this happens, nice. Like it wasn't negative advice, but it certainly wasn't fueling me. And then, of course, when I said I also like I want to go beyond college and play professionally, then that was, of course, the hey, let's have a little come to Jesus moment here and talk about the realities of your life. You're living a little bit in the clouds, Matt, and let's come back to earth. But my senior year, I was drafted by the Padres in the 48th out of 50 rounds when they had at that time as a pitcher shortstop. And it was like a big in your face to all those people who told me I couldn't do it. You know what I mean? It was a validation that calling on my heart wasn't for nothing. Now, I didn't sign to go play with the Padres at the time. I had a scholarship to Northeastern in Boston. So I chased the dream because now the dream has become a reality. I had an opportunity to potentially sign a professional contract. So now I know, hey, this is a thing. So I like to say I went to college for baseball. I was a fine student, but man, my focus was certainly on the field. It was not in the classrooms. But you fast forward through some twists and turns. I was no longer a pitcher shortstop. I converted to catcher in college, which I had never done before. That's a whole different story. I converted to catcher, and fast forward 4 years, I was drafted in the 17th round as a catcher this time by the Royals, and played 5 seasons, 4 as a catcher, 1 as a pitcher. Eventually, I said, I'm going to play until they take the uniform off. And they did, eventually. 5 seasons later, spring training of 2011, I got a call during spring training the evening before. It was kind of like a respect call because I had been there for so long. Relatively speaking, I was a bit of a dinosaur in the minor leagues, like 25 or 26-year-old dinosaur, because most kids are a year or two in it and out. They're 18 to 20. But they called me to say, hey, we're going to release you tomorrow. And that was really the end of a dream. That was the end of a 20-year pursuit of a goal, of a dream that in reality never came to fruition. I actually never made it to the big leagues. So theoretically, I never accomplished the ultimate dream. But I will tell you that I can attribute so much of who I am today to that time as an athlete, especially the 5 seasons playing professionally. So I am grateful, eternally grateful to the Royals, to those 5 seasons of my life, because I am who I am today in large part because of those seasons. Mm-hmm. And, you fast forward to today, I don't want to drag you through all the mud of where did I go from there? Maybe we can get into it if it makes sense. But eventually there was this calling on my heart to sort of do my own thing. If you look at my body of work, my life, I chased that impossible dream and realized pretty close to making it to the big leagues. I realized that professional baseball dream. And now I have 7 children. We homeschool our kids. I launched a business at 40 years old with 7 kids as a sole provider. So I'm not this poster child for conformity, like my body of work will show you that I tend to zig when people zag. So entrepreneurship makes sense for me. I'm a bit of a maverick in that way. So running my own race and leading my own charge was inevitable, I think, in my life at some point.
So how do you think, first off, congratulations on pursuing the dream. And I don't think it's fair to say that you didn't realize it. Maybe you just didn't realize all of it, but you realized it. You got to play, even minor league is not, it's not like that's not professional. They do pay you to show up,
So I did get that paycheck. Yeah. And they covered my health insurance, we'll put it that way.
Yeah. Well, and I guess one thing that I want to touch on is, way back in the beginning, you mentioned, the people you care about kind of trying to give you well-meaning advice of, hey, maybe you want a backup plan. Maybe this isn't all that it's cracked up to be. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. The odds are low, whatever. Everyone, all of which, like you said, those are all factually correct statements. There's nothing,
Right.
they're not lying to you.
Correct.
But
right.
how do you wish they would have encouraged you in your dream, but not, but how do you wish they would have handled that? Do you think they handled it the best way possible? Or thinking now about your kids, if one of your kids has that kind of dream where it is one that might not shake out, but yet it's a dream for them, how do you think you'd encourage them?
Yeah, I love that question. I had one person that stands out to me that was a mentor in high school that didn't give me that advice. I told him, he was a gym teacher at the high school, and he was also a personal trainer, and he was just an amazing guy. And I told him that I wanted to make it to the big league. Like, I want to play professional baseball as my goal. And his response was, okay, so what are we going to do to get there? Which was really cool. And not only did he say that, because I didn't know what we were going to do. I said, I don't know, what are we going to do to get there? He said he kind of participated in my dream with me. And what I mean by that is he told me, because he was a personal trainer, he's like, I train myself at 5 a.m. or a little before 5 a.m. during the week in the mornings before I train a few clients before school starts. But if you want, this summer, I don't have school, so I'll do a lot more training, but I'll still be training myself at 5 a.m. If you want to come work out with me, I can teach you what it looks like to work out, and I can at least help you there. So that summer, I trained 5 days a week with this guy who turns out knew a whole lot and really taught me what hard work looked like, what healthy, smart training, strength training looked like. And that kind of lit this fire of belief in me to say, like, I can do this. And now to answer your question about what do I do with my kids, they say things like that. Like, I want to be a pro baseball player or something. My oldest one says that. And I have other kids who are gymnasts. They're into gymnastics, and they have goals of playing or competing in college. And I actually now encourage that dream. I encourage big dreams, and I support the work. And I think if somebody had done that for me, which kind of like this guy Rick did for me, he supported the effort. Because as I've grown through and reached milestones and failed to reach milestones and everything in between, I realized, like, the juice is in the squeeze. It sounds so cliche that it's about the journey, not the destination, but like, that's really true. Mm-hmm. You learn and become who you're called and created to be in the journey, in the unknown, in the leaps, the steps of faith, the obedient acts of faith, stepping into that room that you don't feel qualified to be in. And that's where your growth happens. It doesn't happen because you accomplish some goal, you reach some milestone. So for my children, I actually don't care if they do accomplish their dreams, because I know making it to the big leagues, playing Division I sports, like, I got there, I've done that. Those aren't the things that's going to make them into the person they're called and created to be. But understanding who they need to be in order to work toward becoming somebody of that caliber is the thing that's going to help them become who they want to be. So I do not poo-poo their dreams. I encourage their dreams, but I also bolster it by saying, we got work to do then if you want to get there. Like, this is who you need to be if you want to realize that. Like, this is the type of behavior, the type of person, the type of mindset that you need to have if that's who you really want to be. So I encourage that, and I wish somebody encouraged that in me really heavily. That would have been pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is that. Well, and I think there's a statement there too of it's you could have sat around and wished to be a baseball player, and the statistics all come true, or you could have actually taken action and started working out and practicing and playing more. The guys that become and the gals that become professionals, a lot of times their high school years, if you look back at it, it's like, wow, they weren't out partying a lot. They were, they were up at 5 a.m. shooting free throws or running or weightlifting or whatever. depending on what the case may be.
Yep. Yeah.
And yeah, are you willing to do the work is a large part of it too. Because you can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't do any work, it doesn't show up.
Yeah. Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard is how the saying goes.
Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit about your faith journey. You know, you mentioned kind of who you're created to be, and I know that's an important part of who you are and how you've formed yourself in the world. And I like to highlight on the show how our life journey influences our faith, and then how our faith influences our life. So talk a little bit about that feedback loop for you and what's that's looked like over the years.
It's really well said, and I love that you do talk about this on the show. I think it's super cool, Scott. So thanks for the opportunity to share it. My faith journey was, I guess it's my own journey, but it's probably one that resonates with most people. I didn't grow up without a faith, and I didn't grow up heavy in a church either. I kind of was like a middle of the road type faith person. So my parents divorced when I was young, second grade, and I split weekends. Some with my dad, some with my mom. So it was like, it became Sundays with my dad. I would attend different types of churches. It was first Lutheran church was mostly the one that he ended up settling into. So I'll go to a Lutheran church, and then I would go to Catholic church, which I grew up in New England, in the Boston area. And I like to joke, but it's kind of not a joke. It's kind of real. If you're from New England, you're either Catholic or Jewish, but nobody knows because nobody talks about it anyway. That's basically what a lot of that is. It's not fully true, but there's a lot of that. So I grew up in a Catholic church some Sundays. Then it became, as we got older, with my mom, we kind of didn't go as much. With my dad, we did go. So I had this weird back and forth faith journey where I was early on in fourth grade. I visited my aunt and uncle in Texas for just a trip. And as any good Texas Baptist should do, they started talking to me about a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And I had never heard about that really in Catholic church. That's not really the language used in the Catholic church. But I was in the midst of this season as a child where my parents had just been divorced. And, you know, as a young child, your parents seem to be your rock. That's the thing you need to depend on. And that seemed to be breaking. That was hard. And this faith thing that they were talking to me about, this relationship with Jesus, seemed to be the thing that would not fail me when the rest of the world did. So I really asked him into my life then. So I guess you could say I was saved then. And that was maybe the infancy of my faith. But I really didn't grow. If that was a seed planted, there was not really much more than a bean sprout for probably the next 20 years or so. It wasn't until my professional career in baseball that I would say that that seed really started to blossom into anything. And it was because I had chased everything the world had to offer and came up empty. I really didn't know anybody that was a Christian. And I hate to say this, but I didn't really know anybody that was a solid Christian that I actually could relate to growing up. It just wasn't in my friend circle. My parents didn't cultivate that community. Anybody that I knew that was like heavy into church was kind of weird. I don't mean to say that, but
that's still true.
Yeah, there's a lot of that for sure. But in baseball, they have this thing called baseball chapel, because on Sundays you play day games and you can't go to church on Sunday mornings. You're at the ballpark. So basically church comes to you. It's a local pastor from any denomination,
wherever you're at.
Wherever you're at in the country, they come to you and literally come into your dugout after you've already done your baseball work right before the game. So you've been on the field, you're dirty, you're sweating. You know, some guys have seeds or gum or chewing tobacco. I mean, all of it, like it's all there in your dugout element. And there's a handful of guys that are there with you that you clearly get along with. They're your teammates. They're chasing the same ridiculous dream. They're into the same things you are, sports, healthy living. Like you have a lot in common. And then you're learning about Jesus with them. And the biggest eye-opening part of that for me was in the clubhouse. Some of these guys that were from all around the country, you know, they're here talking to me about Jesus and saying his name out loud as matter-of-factly as they are talking about like the game last night or tying their shoes. And that was a new experience for me. But that's the thing that got me curious to say like, well, all right, let me learn more about this. Like I believe I was never not a believer, but I never understood that you could
Mhm.
be a normal person into the things that we're into and be a strong Christian. Like talk to me about that. So that's where my faith really started to grow. And I don't know what you want to call that seed today, but it feels like an oak tree, and it's pretty big. It's grown because it's foundational to every decision I make today. That feedback loop you talked about, right? Like faith is now influences every decision I make, and that is reflected in the life I live, which goes back to I won't make another decision without it being a faith-filled one,
Mhm.
which leads to probably some different version of me in a year, 2 years, 5 years. Like God will continue to mold and shape me.
Absolutely. So, talk a little bit in the intro when I was talking before. You talked about relationship with money, talking about transforming people's relationship with money, and that's language that I use as well. I talk about how people relate to money, and yet that's kind of a weird. Financial people talk about math. We don't talk about relationships and
Right.
mindset and beliefs and limiting beliefs and how do you think about it and what do you do. We don't talk about all of that stuff. It's just a
Right.
math problem. So how did you come to that realization that it's not just a math problem?
Yeah, I love that. It does sound woo-woo, when you talk about relationships with money. Like, what are you talking about? It's dollars and cents, math's not an opinion. Just tell me the math. The journey or the education that I experienced, it's a first-hand education that I'm now trying to share. It's my truth that I want to share with other people. I learned it because I grew up in this scarcity world of money. I didn't know it actually until I really got into the world of finance. I say that I learned finance through immersion in the same way you learn Spanish by moving to Spain. I was hired as an advisor to get into the world of finance and teach people finance. Prior to this, I was in finance and accounting staffing. So not personal finance, financial advising. I understood numbers and money, but it was not my role. So now I had to learn that new language of money. And as I learned it, I started to realize, oh my gosh, I have a pretty unhealthy relationship with money. And I never even knew I had a relationship with money because I grew up in a home where I got screamed at. I got in a lot of trouble if I didn't turn the heat down when I left in the winter in Boston, and it's cold and it's an oil heat house. So if I didn't turn it down to 58, like we heard about it. And you couldn't turn the heat up beyond 64. If you're still cold, put a sweater on or something.
Mhm.
Uh,
If you're still cold, it means you're not wearing enough clothes. It doesn't mean turn the heat up.
Right. That was the mindset, is that we are conserving every dime, every penny. It's a finite resource. You better be grateful for every dollar you have, because it's going to be hard to break out of this cycle. And that was sort of it wasn't instructed to me. It was what I caught as a child. As a child, more is caught than taught. Mm-hmm. And since society doesn't allow you to speak about money, we didn't talk about it in our house. My mom didn't talk about it in her house with her parents. They didn't talk about it with their parents, who are products of the Great Depression. We just everybody just kind of caught this unhealthy scarcity worry mindset around money. And some of that will serve you, I think. So I'm not saying that having a scarcity mindset about money is in itself a problem. What I am saying is that when it controls you and you don't control it, it becomes a problem, because it's limiting who you can become. Because God, I know in John 10:10, he talks about an abundant life. The thief comes in the night to steal, kill, and destroy, but he wants you to have a life in full, in abundance. And it is impossible to live in full, in abundance, when every single minute of your day is spent worrying about tomorrow, right? Like, you can't live in abundance and in worry simultaneously. And I recognized that as I started to learn about money, because many of my fears about finances were fears of the unknown. So when I started to understand it, the fear sort of started to dissipate. Think about like your freshman year, going into your freshman year of high school. You're an incoming freshman. That eighth grade summer is a very nerve-wracking August for most people, where they're about to enter their freshman year for the first time. They don't know their classrooms, their teachers, the school layout. They're worried about a lot. There's a lot of fear and anxiety about becoming a high schooler until a week or 10 days go by of your freshman year. And 80% or so of those fears are gone. It's because what was once unknown in the summer is now known, and a lot of the fear goes away. And I've learned that most people in their life, financially speaking, live as incoming freshmen. I was that same person. I was living like an incoming freshman because there was this world of high finance, investing, figuring out how to work with budgets and trading. And I didn't know any of the terms. I didn't understand them. I thought I couldn't unless I had this pedigree of finance and this history of degrees of some of the best schools in the world. I didn't have that in my family. So I felt like I wasn't privy to knowing that info until I was forced to learn it and realized, okay, this is actually not what I thought it was. And my fear went away. So that's how I started to understand my relationship with money existed, first of all. And then I learned it existed. It was not very good. And then you fast forward a few years and decade and thousands of conversations with people about the money. And I learned I'm not alone here. We all share some on the spectrum of health. We all share some varying degree of unhealth as it relates to our money. And I've learned personally, as my relationship with money has changed, my entire life has changed. Like, I don't live in this worry and fear mindset that I didn't even recognize was just sort of sitting in the back of my mind all the time. I can be more present with my kids, more present with my wife. I can make more courageous decisions financially. Obviously, it's prayer-led first, but I also know what levers to pull when I need to pull them, if I need to pull them. And there's some comfort in the understanding of that. So for me, I'm after trying to help people live the life that I now live, because I used to live the life that they're probably living right now.
Well, and I think too, I relate this back to what we were talking about earlier about, folks that in a well-meaning way tell you things about your dream that quashed it, or seemed to quash it, or could have quashed it, or whatever. And again, nothing that they said was wrong. I mean, it's not untrue. It's how did they approach it? How did they set it up? How did they couch it? What was the next thing? In other words, it's, hey, this is going to be really hard. Stop. Or is it, hey, this is going to be really hard. What can I do to help you? What do you need to do to make this happen? Are you willing to work for it? That kind of the rest of those. And I think with money, we have a lot of that same thing where money is finite. Yeah, it is, and yes, you have to make opportunity choices. And if you do one thing with money, you can't do something, but that's not the same as saying it's scarce, even though those seem to mean the same, those aren't the same mindset.
Right. What a great distinction. You're right.
Treating hey, maybe we don't need to turn the heat up as much because we want to, we don't want to spend money there that we can spend somewhere else is one thing. Hey, we can't spend money anywhere, it's a different thing. So it is weird how sometimes it's not even just the way that we say these things to each other. It's the rest of the sentence that comes after, because even if you're in a limiting situation where you've got struggles right now with money, but what are we going to do to change it?
Yeah.
What action are you going to take? What work are you going to do? What's the next step?
Great. Instead of we can't, it's how can we? It's this subtle nuanced difference that you're talking about. And that's so powerful and so well said.
Yeah. And that is the difference between scarcity and abundance. Because I think you're right. A lot of times people hear the abundance mindset and think it's woo woo. It's the, if you believe it, it'll come true. It's like, no. No. There's some steps in between those two.
You better put some feet on those beliefs.
So what are some of the things that you think have shaped that change in beliefs? You mentioned taking the financial job and learning more things, but I think it's probably more than just information. What about the baseball career? What about the family life? What are the different kind of nuggets, if you could pull out a couple of those that helped you begin to look at it a little different.
Yeah. I think being around wealth helped me change my mind on it. Growing up, there was a section of the town that I grew up in that was the wealthy section, and like I didn't know people from there. Nobody knew people from there. That was just like the mysterious, wealthy part of town. And that was sort of my understanding of wealth, is that like it's unattainable. You come from the other side of the track sort of thing. But then I got into pro sports, and it was a funny dynamic in the players' parking lot. When you go to spring training, you could see who the big league cars were and who the minor league cars were.
Oh, wait, you mean as a minor leaguer, you weren't paid hundreds of millions of dollars?
Oh, man, Scott, my first paycheck, $600 after taxes every 2 weeks. And then I was paying $500 a month to live in that hotel.
Yeah.
So that's where my pay, and I only got paid in the season. So the season is basically April, May, June, July, August, and a week of September. You don't get paid in the off season. So that's for anybody doing that math, that's a sub 5-figure salary. That's a 4-figure salary. Yeah. No, so you don't make quite enough money to buy the tricked out Escalade that I saw, or the Lamborghini next to it in the parking lot. But what that did do to me is that it brought this feeling of unattainable wealth right to my face. And it made dreams become a reality, because here I am on the same ball fields doing the same life, walking to the same parking lot with the same kind of person who just happens to get in a car that's worth 100 times whatever other cars we're getting into. And that actually does something for you mentally. It makes you kind of believe like that dream or that unattainable vision is now in my face. It makes you run a little bit faster, knowing that it can happen to you too. Like, for example, today, this evening, I'm going out to dinner with an amazing couple of ours, going on a date. And this man has a private jet. This man, halfway through the year, he's done multiple 9 figures in his business. Mm-hmm. And rewind to the childhood version of me, those people were not part of my life. I could not fathom that. And now that I experience that and I do life with people like that, it makes me realize like this is actually possible. And I think just the belief, everything starts with an idea of being possible first. If you can never get there, it can never become a reality. If Steve Jobs or whoever it was never thought of the iPhone doesn't become a thing. Like, it was an idea first. Mm-hmm. So that has really helped me shape what's possible and shape my mindset, my relationship with money. I will tell you though, now in hindsight, after having experienced thousands of combos and a lot of people's financial situations, and really, again, like using my truth as primary example number one, I am case study number one. The single biggest impactful exercise or discipline that I've created that has actually changed my relationship with money, biologically speaking, has been giving it away. And I have created what I call a blessing account. It's a separate bank account for me, because I knew if it was in my own bank account, I'd find reasons that I couldn't give it away. I needed it for this or that or whatever. But if it's in a separate account, it's out of sight, out of mind. So I'm almost putting up my own guardrails, like getting out of my own way. And that came from the decision to finally tithe consistently. I wanted to give consistently. I had tithed and then not tithed, and tithed and then not tithed, depending on the season of my life. And as you could hear throughout my journey, like there's no part of me, pro athlete, 7 children, homeschooling, entrepreneur, like there's no part of me that rides fences. Like if I do something, I'm going all in, except when it came to giving. I was fence riding, and I couldn't stand that about myself. So I really felt God laying it heavy on my heart that like, you need to be consistent with this. So the way that I figured out to be consistent with it was committing to it. But by committing to it for me meant opening up a separate account and putting money into that account designated for other people for the tithe. And I learned that very quickly as I started to do that, money lost its hold on me. It lost its grips on me that I didn't even realize it had. So much so that I actually enjoyed giving money. I looked forward to earning money so that I could give more away, which was like not ever me. That was not my mindset. Not like I was a stingy person. I just never thought about it. And I had to ask some friends of mine who have PhDs in psychology, like, what is happening here? How come I'm not really worrying about money? I'm not earning boatloads more money. It had nothing to do with the income. It had nothing to do with my expenses to income ratio, any of that. It was the fact, like, I started giving it away, and now I feel a lot better about my finances and what's happening. So I talked to these PhDs in psychology, and I asked, can you help me understand this? And then they said to me, look, I think what's happening, in psychology, we often say there's two root emotions, love and fear. And then the rest of the emotions sort of stem off of those. Your desire to hold on to money, grip it tightly, was rooted in fear. It's a fear-based emotion. But then your conscious decision to give money away was a love-based emotion. Love is always the stronger of the two emotions. And we know in psychology, you can't simultaneously experience both emotions about the same thing at the same time. You can have both emotions, different times, different things, even for the same thing, different times. But at the same time, you can't. And what they said, in your disciplined, consistent act of giving, what's happening is subconsciously, your brain's basically telling itself, hey, that thing you used to worry about, holding on to that money, like, turns out we can give it away now. We don't have to worry. We don't have to hold it so tightly. I was subconsciously rewiring my relationship with money toward abundance. And I didn't know I was doing it. I did it because it was a calling on my heart that God was convicting me to say, you've got to commit to this. But biologically speaking, my mindset is being rewired because of that generous act. And there's science behind it. There's brain scan studies on generosity that I could get into, but that's what was happening. And that has had the most profound effect on my relationship with money.
Right. Yeah. I point out to people, because I often end up preaching on money in church. And one of the things I put to people is, when you look at the tithe as, oh, I'm giving this because God needs my money, that's really a very arrogant way of looking at it, because if God needs your money, God's just going to take your money.
That is really funny. Right? God created the everything, earth with the word. He doesn't probably need your money.
I don't think he needs the money. So if God is asking us to give and give regularly, it's not because God needs the money. So it must be something that we need. So that's where it comes from. It's
well said.
God is asking us to do it for us, not for God. So when you look at it that way, you realize, oh, yeah, never mind. I should probably do this for me, and not again, that's not a greedy, selfish thing. It's just that's where God's telling us to rewire ourselves. And yeah, I love that. I love that idea of love and fear too, because I think you're right. It is a fear-based versus a love-based mindset.
Yeah, that's so good. Come on, it's an act of obedience. That's really well said.
Yeah, and it's for us. It's it's done out of kindness for us. It's that gentleman that said, hey, you really want to be an athlete? Get up at 5 a.m. and show up all summer, and we'll see what happens. Yeah. Because you could have chosen not to show up.
True. Totally.
You could have not shown up any morning, but you did. And, that's what changes you, because, it changed you. It's the same thing with giving. You can stop giving anytime you want.
You're right. That's exactly right. And it's not the amount I've learned. No. It's not the amount that you give. It's the disciplined act of giving.
It's the consistency.
What I like about that blessing account in particular is that it feeds both giving needs, both the consistent, disciplined act of giving and the opportunity for spontaneous giving, because the account's there. So when you can have both and kind of fill both cups with the same thing, to me, that's a big win.
Yeah. My wife and I actually have a line item on our budget that's called spontaneous giving. So we give a tithe that's a regular tithe that's, based off of everything, but we fund a line on our budget that's called spontaneous giving. And so we use it a lot for, like, if my wife's out to eat or we're out to eat and we see first responders that are there, well, we'll pick up the tab, and we do a lot of it anonymous. Just call the waitress over and go, hey, pay for their stuff. Don't tell them who did it. kind of things. Because,
So great. Oh man. Can I
buy the
just say something on
groceries of
that?
somebody or that kind of thing. So,
Oh, wait, what did you just say?
Occasionally we'll pay for groceries for somebody,
I
or,
love it.
just those things. If we're called to do it, it's the line that lets us go, okay, I don't have to think about it. I don't have to get permission. I don't have to worry about, are we going to not be able to pay the electric bill or whatever, because we've actually set aside money and designated it for those acts of spontaneous giving.
That's so good. Can I say something on that? That idea of giving so that it comes back to you, or giving so that the person will thank you, is not generosity. To me, that's selfishness disguised as generosity.
Mm-hmm.
It really is about a heart posture of like, I am giving because I feel called to do so, and I want it to be anonymous. That's fine. I think that's the heart posture of giving. I did the same thing. One time I was out with four of my kids. They won, which is funny. I set up this contest of brushing your teeth in my house. And if they hit 14 times, twice a day, 7 days a week, we would go out to IHOP, which is probably the wrong reward for a teeth brushing contest.
Go to IHOP and pour the syrup on.
Exactly. Drink the syrup straight. And we were there, and because I include my kids in the finance convos and the giving convos and everything in between, and the starting the business convos, because I recognize like my unhealth with money was because nobody talked about it. So I'm intentional with speaking about it, giving, using money as a tool for good. I think that's the most important thing a kid can see. So they know the blessing account exists. We're out to eat, and this isn't the first time we've done it, but they said, hey, Papa, they call me Papa, which is great. I don't have to get changed when I become a grandfather. But they said, Papa, let's bless this waitress. She's been so nice to us. I'm like, okay, guys, like, if you're feeling called to give, let's do it. So what we did was we doubled the bill. Whatever the bill is, that was what the tip was too. And it was IHOP, so it wasn't like it was like this super ornate big meal that was super expensive. But they were so excited. We were walking out the restaurant, giddy, except like, if anybody listening to this has young kids, they understand. They had to go to the bathroom, of course. One had to go to the bathroom, the next had to go to the bathroom, and then the next had to go.
And they don't all go at the same time either. They go.
No. So I wound up standing outside the bathroom after we paid for like 15 minutes because one had to go. It felt like that. It was probably more like 8 or 9 minutes, but she's already bust the table, cleared the thing. But I got to kind of have this bird's eye view of watching her, and she picked up the check and was very clearly emotional about it. And it timing wise was beautiful because my last child had just come out of the bathroom as she made like this beeline to me, which at first I was like, oh crap. Like I didn't want her to know this. Like I didn't give for this reason, but she's making this beeline to me and I can't move now. I'm in her crosshairs. She comes right to me and doesn't say a thing. She just gives me a giant hug and then starts to tell me a story after that. Her purse had just been stolen the week before, and this was around Christmas time. And she had really lost a lot of hope. She had a lot of worry about not being able to give to some important people in her life, give gifts. And that simple act of generosity, that act of kindness, like renewed hope in her. And she was so grateful. She was crying. And my kids got to see all that. And I thought after, like, wow, thanks God for that exchange, because now my kids see money as this like incredible tool to pour into people and brighten their day and change their life, as opposed to anything negative. And I'm like, if we can all see money that way, and more importantly, use money that way, what an incredible like generational chain breaking effect that can have.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a few questions that I like to ask all of my guests, but before I go there, is there anything else about this idea of relating to money that you'd like to share with the listener?
I think I just want to leave the listener with anybody listening with maybe an image that can stick with you, because sometimes stories might stick, might not stick, facts may not stick, but I think an image, I look at it like this, and this is what's happened to me. This is sort of the language and the imagery that I've figured out in my own life, is that like, I kept money tight, like clenched fist. I held tightly. I had this perceived illusion of control. I don't know how else to say it. Where if I gripped it harder, I could do better with it. I didn't want to release it. And then you think of the concept of receiving something. Like if someone's going to throw me a football pass, for example, and if I wanted to maintain those clenched fists, I'm not going to effectively, consistently receive that football. Like I can't catch it very well. As soon as I start to loosen my grip and open my hands a bit, which I did with money, but you want to use the image of I open my grip, loosen my hands, somebody throws me that football. I am now in a position to receive that football. And I would say, like, I am now, because I've loosened my grip on money, I am much more in a position to receive the calling on my life, to receive what God has put into my heart and put into my life, and be able to go and live it out in abundance, the way He is designed. Because I don't have that tight grip on it. I've given up the control. He's in the driver's seat now, and I'm in the passenger seat. So I think that in areas of people's lives where they feel like there's a struggle and there's a constant pull, you probably need to loosen up your grip. That's probably the problem.
Absolutely. Well said. So my brand is Inspired Stewardship, and I kind of run things through that lens of stewardship. And yet over the years, I've kind of discovered that's one of those words that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So when you hear the word stewardship, what does that word mean to you?
I think it's using your time, talent, treasures well. I think it's using them as God has uniquely called you to use them on this earth. I think we all have a gift in us. And I think that as soon as we learn how to use those gifts in the service of others, we are now being good stewards of what God has given us.
So this is my favorite question that I like to ask everybody. Imagine for a moment that I could invent this magic machine. And with this machine, I was able to take you from where you are today and transport you into the future, maybe 150, maybe 250 years. And through the power of this machine, you were able to look back and see your entire life, see all of the ripples, all of the connections, all of the impacts you've left. What impact do you hope you've left in the world?
My gosh, what a cool machine that could be. I look at legacy a lot like the way Pastor Craig Rochelle, who's also a leadership coach, he says, legacy isn't what you leave for people, it's what you leave in them. And for me, I want that legacy to be, first off, that I've taught my children and the people of the lives that I've touched, I've taught them what it looks like to live a faith-filled life, to live almost with reckless abandon toward faith, like to have this level of obedience that borders insanity. I don't know how else to say it. And I can tell you, like, starting a business at 40 years old with 7 children as the sole providers can sound pretty insane unless it's God-led. And then it's just another act of obedience. And if I can teach or exemplify that in a way that my kids catch it, or the people in the lives that I hang out with and interact with catch it, I think that, well, I know that will leave anybody, the proper mark on anybody, because then anybody that does that is now listening to God's calling on their life, and they will live to the fullest. I don't know if that answered it great, but that's the vision I have when you talk about that.
That answers it. That answers it. So what's on the roadmap for you? What's coming next as you kick off 2026?
2026, I think, will be a year of adding staff to Reconstructing Wealth. We launched middle of the year of 24. So in the business's eyes, it's a baby business. It's really a continuation of everything that I've learned as best practices as an advisor for the last decade or so. But we're getting to a place where I know that I have this God-sized vision and mission on my heart for the business to be able to serve and break generational chains in the way we've talked about. But to do it at the magnitude that I feel like He's put on my heart, it's not for me. I can't do it alone. So I think there's going to be business growth. And I'm also excited to see where my children, how the school year goes for my children and what direction they head to. I think my biggest ministry, my most important ministry is always in my home. So I look at that as calling number one. So that to me, I'm excited to see what this change in, I don't want to say mentorship, but change in how they're learning and who they're learning from. I want to see how that impacts who they're created to be and impacts their nature. We'll see.
So you can find out more about Matt Morizio over at reconstructingwealth.com. Of course, I'll have a link to that in the show notes as well. Matt, anything else you'd like to share with the listener?
Yeah, the last thing, thank you for asking. The last thing I'll share is if anybody is on Instagram listening to this and wants to understand more, maybe doesn't want to have a conversation, or maybe they do, you could follow me and send me a DM about this podcast. I'm happy to send you a link to a course I created. It's free. It'll just cost an email address, but it's a free video course, 3-part series, 6 to 8 minute long videos, all about going from a scarcity, fear-based mindset to an abundance, big life mindset on money. And it dives into some nuts and bolts of personal finance. It talks about the science behind it. It talks about my faith. It talks about a lot. So if you want, I'm happy to send that to anybody who listens. Just follow me. It's just my name, at Matt Morizio on Instagram. Send me a DM about this podcast, and I will send you that link. No problem.
Awesome. I'll add that too as a link in the show notes. So for anyone that needs to find that, you can welcome to come over there, and I'll have a link to that as well. Thank you so much for doing that for the listeners. I'm sure that's going to be something that folks will take advantage of.
I hope so.
Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you enjoyed this episode, please do us a favor. Go over to inspiredstewardship.com/iTunes rate, all one word, iTunes rate. It'll take you through how to leave a rating and review and how to make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that you can get every episode as it comes out in your feed. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.